Picture this. It's 1978. Warren Buffett is already a superstar investor, but he's still buying bad businesses cheap. It was a good strategy, but not a great one. And then his partner, Charlie Munger, delivers a single pivotal instruction that changes everything. It created a new, smarter model for wealth, and it went like this. Forget buying good businesses cheap. We should buy wonderful businesses at a fair price.
Now let that sink in for a second. This one sentence, this was the intellectual earthquake that shifted the entire foundation of Berkshire Hathaway. This wasn't just some casual advice. No, this was a complete re-engineering of how to think about value. It was really the birth of what we now call the Munger Model, a framework that moved way beyond spreadsheets and into the world of psychology, history, and basic human nature. Honestly, this was the moment Berkshire Hathaway went from being just a good company to a legendary one. And it was all thanks to this one powerful idea.
And this slide right here, it perfectly captures that seismic shift. You see, Buffett's original method was something called cigar butt investing. The idea is you walk down the street, you find a discarded cigar with one puff left in it. It's kind of gross, yeah, but hey, it's a free puff. In investing, that meant buying awful companies for less than they were worth if you sold them for parts. It was purely a numbers game. But Munger came in and said, wait a minute, the real compounding wealth, the kind that builds empires, that comes from owning wonderful businesses and just holding on to them for a long, long time. So the focus shifted from just financial data to understanding the world through a whole new set of mental frameworks.
So to really get the Munger model, we've got to go on a bit of a journey. First, we'll look at the personal struggles that made him realize he needed this unique system. Then we're going to dive deep into the core of his whole philosophy, the latticework of mind. After that, we'll see exactly how he put these powerful ideas into action, day in and day out. And finally, we'll reflect on his incredible legacy and what it all means for us.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Where did this all come from? Well, like any great invention, the Munger model was born out of necessity. This wasn't something he just dreamed up in an ivory tower. No, this way of thinking was forged in the fire of professional struggle and, frankly, deep personal pain. He knew he needed to build a defense against failure.
Munger's entire worldview was shaped by these really distinct and often really difficult life experiences. As a meteorologist in the military, he learned pretty quickly you can't just hope for good weather, you have to work with probabilities and cold, hard data. Then, as a real estate lawyer, he had a front row seat to disaster. He watched brilliant, super specialized people make absolutely idiotic mistakes the second they stepped outside their little bubble of expertise. But it was personal tragedy, losing his young son to cancer and suffering early financial losses, that really drove home the need for a bulletproof mental operating system. He realized life and markets are completely unforgiving, and your only real defense is a superior way of thinking.
And that brings us to the central question Munger really spent his whole life trying to answer. It's not, how do I get rich? It's not even, how do I find the next big thing? It's way deeper. His question was, how do I systematically avoid stupidity? See, he understood that over a lifetime, avoiding the big, catastrophic errors is way more important than hitting a few home runs. Success is all about just staying in the game. And honestly, that's a question we all face, right? And Munger's answer is both incredibly simple and totally profound.
His favorite tool for avoiding stupidity was the simple but powerful idea he called inversion. So instead of asking, how can I achieve success, he would just flip the whole problem on its head. He'd ask, what would guarantee failure? For example, if you're launching a new product, don't just ask, how do we make this a hit? Invert it. Ask, what would absolutely guarantee this thing fails? Well, we could ignore all customer feedback, we could create a super confusing marketing message, and oh yeah, we could price it way too high. Okay, great. Now we have a perfect checklist of what not to do. By figuring out the path to a terrible outcome first, you can just steer clear of it. It's that simple.
Okay, so now we get Munger's defensive strategy. If inversion tells you where not to go, this next concept is the map that shows you how to actually navigate the entire world. This is the absolute core of the Munger model, the multidisciplinary latticework of mental models.
Munger's great insight was that most experts suffer from what he called man with a hammer syndrome. You know how it goes. To a man with only a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. The thing is, the real world doesn't care about academic departments. A problem is never just a physics problem or just a psychology problem. So think of it like a toolbox. If all you have is a hammer, you're going to try and solve every single problem by hitting it. But if you have a full toolbox, a wrench, a screwdriver, a saw, you can pick the right tool for the job. The latticework of mental models is that fully stocked toolbox for your mind. It's about collecting the big, important ideas from all the major disciplines and letting them hang together, connected, ready to be used.
And the whole point of building this latticework is to achieve something Munger called worldly wisdom. Now, this isn't about being a trivia champion. It's about having a toolkit of mental models that lets you see a problem from all sides. It's the ability to look at a company like Coca-Cola and see not just its balance sheet, but also the deep psychological power of its brand, the physical reality of its distribution network, and the sheer mathematical beauty of its compounding returns. That right there is what lets you spot those truly wonderful businesses. It's the difference between being a one-trick pony and a true master. Worldly wisdom gives you two huge advantages. First, it helps you spot the moat. That's the durable competitive advantage that protects a business from its rivals. Just like a moat protects a castle. And it isn't just about a better product. It's about deep structural advantages like the crazy brand loyalty of Apple users or the massive scale of a place like Costco. The second pillar, and maybe the one Munger was most passionate about, is mastering the psychology of misjudgment. He believed that most of the world's big mistakes weren't because people were dumb, but because of standard psychological biases that just cause our brains to short-circuit.
Let's just look at a few of these, because once you see them, you'll see them everywhere. Reciprocation tendency. You ever feel like you have to buy something from a salesperson who gave you a free sample? Yeah, that's your brain's instinct to repay a favor kicking in. Or availability bias. Our brains give extra weight to vivid, recent stuff. It's why people are more afraid of a super rare shark attack they just saw in the news than the much more real risk of driving their car. And inconsistency avoidance tendency. Oh, this is a big one. We are literally wired to hate changing our minds. We will ignore overwhelming evidence just to avoid admitting we were wrong. By mastering these biases, Munger could avoid them in his own thinking and spot when others were falling for them. That is a massive edge.
So, having a great philosophy is one thing, but execution, that's everything. How did Munger actually build and use this incredible mental framework day to day? Well, it wasn't magic. It was a set of disciplined, repeatable habits that turned him into one of the world's master thinkers. Let's look at his two most important habits.
Munger was famously called a book with legs. You'd almost never see him without one. But look, this wasn't casual beach reading. This was a systematic, daily mission to feed his latticework. He read everything, and he read it all the time. Biographies, history, science, psychology, all with the single goal of hunting for new mental models. He once said, "In my whole life, I have known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero." He wasn't just reading for facts. He was reading for frameworks. He was looking for foundational ideas to add to his mental toolbox. For Munger, reading wasn't a hobby. It was the engine of his success.
And the checklist. This was Munger's secret weapon. He was inspired by airline pilots, who have a mandatory checklist before every single flight to prevent simple, dumb errors. He applied that same rigor to investing. Before any big decision, he'd run through his checklist of mental models. He'd start with opportunity cost. Is this the absolute best place for our money right now? Then he'd apply inversion. Let's list all the ways this thing could go to zero. He'd be absolutely ruthless about his own psychological biases. Am I falling in love with this idea? Am I ignoring evidence that proves me wrong? And finally, he'd stress test that moat. Is this advantage really going to last? Or could some new tech wipe it out in 5 years? This system turns decision-making from an emotional gut feel thing into a disciplined, rational process.
Charlie Munger was more than just a brilliant investor. He was a true original. His passing in November of 2023, just shy of his 100th birthday, really marked the end of an era. His life was this complete, masterful work. He wasn't just an investor, he was an intellectual architect who designed a better way to think. Munger's life spanned almost a century of incredible change. And through it all, he was a living testament to the power of intellectual rigor and lifelong learning. He literally transformed himself from a modest lawyer into the intellectual co-pilot behind Berkshire Hathaway, one of the greatest wealth creation machines in history. He was proof of the power of a well-stocked mind. And if you take away one single thing about his legacy, it's this simple but profound truth. It's not what you know, it's how you think that really matters. In a world obsessed with secret tips and hot stock picks, he proved that the ultimate competitive advantage isn't having better information, it's having a better framework for processing the information that everybody else already has. And that brings us to the most important part. See, the good news is you don't have to be a billionaire investor to use Munger's wisdom. His ideas are universal tools for better thinking. This is his intellectual mandate, passed on to anyone who's willing to do the work and build their own mental latticework.
So how do you start? First, just commit to acquiring worldly wisdom every single day. Read way outside your comfort zone. If you're in business, read a book on biology. If you're a doctor, read history. Second, make inversion a daily habit. Before you start any big project, ask yourself, how could I guarantee this fails? And then just don't do those things. Third, a great place to start is to really study the 20 or so major psychological biases that cause most of our bad decisions. And finally, and most importantly, become a lifelong learning machine. So what are you waiting for? Go pick up a book on a topic you know nothing about and start building.
In the end, Charlie Munger built his entire model on a profound truth: that narrow, specialized knowledge often leads to disaster, and that true worldly wisdom is the only reliable asset we have. His relentless intellectual rigor and his mastery of inversion meant that he and Buffett could consistently avoid the kind of stupidity that ruins everybody else, which made them basically unstoppable. And his journey leaves all of us with a powerful mandate for our own growth. As Munger taught us, the highest form of wealth is, and always will be, a well-stocked mind.